Good morning.
And it's Thursday already. We are Rural Community Solutions, Kim and Frank Spillers. We're so glad that you have joined us this morning. We will help you design family-friendly, youth-centered places. And if that excites you, we're going to be talking about an aspect of that today, about everybody being right.
So have you ever had that conversation where somebody just kind of looks at you, says something, and you go, huh? It's probably happened a lot over the course of the last couple of years. But think about this, that everybody is coming from a position of what they say is right. And so when you change that way of thinking about they're right, then you have to start finding out why they are right. So we're going to have that conversation today. And then I'm going to ask you, I'm right. Stay with us. We'll be right here.
Picture, if you will, the pure, raw prairie. No wires, no fences, no roads, not even a farmhouse. No sign of civilization. This is what a person saw that was crossing the prairie in a wagon more than 170 years ago. They jumped off the wagon, looked around, and declared, "This is where I want to settle and build a town. A great place to live and a great place to raise my family." So they took a risk. They built a house made out of the land, planted food to eat, and cared for the land. Then they wrote back to their friends where they came from and described the great opportunity and promise that they have found. They invited who they knew to join them in their discovery, people they had a relationship with, and so they came, family by family, and those families invited others they knew, who they wanted to live with within that community. The communities grew because the needs of the families grew, so entrepreneurs started businesses to meet those community needs. Ice houses, broom factories, general stores, and many other types of sole proprietor entrepreneurial businesses started up within the community. All of our communities across this country, all around the world, were started in this way, with a vision of the future and a plan to grow with people.
And grow with people they did because everybody thought they were right. Everybody knew they were right. Everybody said things that were right. And so as you build your community, as you build your family, as you build your relationships, coming at the aspect of a person is right with what they say, whatever they say, just come at them with, they are right. It will help you get over every conflict that you have ever had and you will ever have in your community. And so as we start to build this, let me remind you of our 4 pillars that we have. Our 4 pillars are relationship, engagement, collaboration, and entrepreneurship. Now, we've really started to focus on relationship and engagement because that is where communities really are made. That's where communities welcome people. That's where communities build the environment to where people feel like they belong. And it is that feeling like they belong that is the important. It's the bottom line of your community, because if people don't feel like they belong, it's nothing, and it's not their fault. It's nothing that they have done. It is the environment that they're living in that they just don't feel. It's their feeling. It's their emotion. It's their reaction. They don't feel like they belong in your community, or they don't feel like they belong in your organization, or they don't feel like they belong in your family, your church, whatever it might be. It's that person and their reaction to the environment that is created by everybody else. And so when you build those relationships and then you put into place the engagement factor, And we're going to be really talking about engagement over the next couple of days here. The engagement, because our processes build the engagement, and it builds the engagement to where people are understood. Engagement means to understand somebody. That means to actively listen, not just wait to talk, but to actively listen to another person as they are talking, and to actively listen to where they are right and why they are right in their mind of the position and the interest they have within that conversation. And so as we go down this road, it's an interesting road, because the bottom line is, no matter what people believe or say, they are right. So that means that everyone is right. There is nobody that's wrong. Think about that for a little bit as we talk about and talk through the concept of this conversation.
So one place to start is actually to be open-minded, that you can give some credence, you can give some permission that someone else with whom you either disagree or they hold, we're going to talk about positions and interests in a minute, but if they hold a different position than you do on any kind of topic, could be whether or not you change the church doors, could be whether or not to put stop signs on Main Street or stop lights or something like that. If somebody holds a different position, are you willing to be open-minded enough to consider that maybe their position has value? Maybe they're really right. And to their way of thinking, they're right. And to your way of thinking, you're right. What we want to help you try to get to is common ground that meets somewhere in the middle. You don't have to agree at the end of this, but are you willing to be open-minded enough to step into someone else's shoes and see a position, see an issue from their place?
So what happens when a community votes? And this is since we have a republic, we live in a republic, and we have a democracy, we're looking for democratic values within our communities. And so voting comes to mind. Voting, however, separates us. Voting is you vote on two choices, this or that, or you vote on this person or that person. And as you vote for what you feel is right. And as we vote within our communities, as the majority starts to take interest, and in many of our communities, this majority is in power and keeps in power and continues in power and grows in power and grows in a foothold of I am right, you start to marginalize groups. You start to have these groups that feel outside of the circle because their concepts aren't really taken into account. Their concepts, they don't have a foothold. They might not have the popularity of the rest of the community because of some culture that has been built. And we talk about culture at the beginning of the show. We talk about how your community was formed. That community was formed because of like-minded people. You wrote back to people you knew. You wrote back to people that you were familiar with. You wrote back to the people that you wanted to live in your community because they had the right culture. And so the people that moved into your community that maybe weren't invited, but threw a dart, picked your community for some reason, got a job within your community
Or started a
for
business.
some reason, started a job for some reason in your community, and they don't feel like they belong in there. They are part of a marginalized group. Marginalize means this: to relegate to an unimportant or powerless position within a society or group. So you have marginalized people, you have marginalized groups in your community. And if you are in the power of your group, if you are in that group within power, sometimes you just don't care about what other people think, because what you think is correct. It's in power, right? But if you want to make a community, now this is the important part.
A healthy community.
If you want to make your community, if you want to help it grow, you need to reach out to the marginalized groups and bring them into engagement. And that's where the engagement comes along. Because as Kim said earlier, everyone has interests and positions. And so when you vote on here, you vote on here. So you're voting either way, one or two. You take a position. I take a position to support this person. I take a position to support this bond issue. I take a position against the bond issue. I take a position against school merger. I take a position for school merger. You have a divide, right? That divide on each side of the coin is right. Everybody takes a position. Now, the position is this. Positions are actions a person will take to meet their needs. A position are the actions a person takes to meet their needs. And the position represents that outcome a person wants. So I'm going to vote on where my needs are. What's best to meet my needs? My needs, not everybody else's, but my needs. That's how I'm going to vote. That's how I'm going to choose. Now, what's behind that choice, what's behind that position is my interest. My interests are the needs and concerns that motivate me. They are all the needs and concerns, and plus the values. And we're going to be talking about values tomorrow. So come back as we continue our conversation tomorrow, as we say, how do you have those conversations that take into account a person's values? How do you have those that people feel a part of the community? How do you have those conversations where you might have opposite side positions, but your interests are the same? How do you find those interests of that? Because those interests represent why a person wants something. Not what they want, it's why they want something. And that gets to the underlying issue. We call that the problem behind the problem. And that's where conflict comes in. I can take any issue, and I can take the outcome of that issue, and that's the common ground. What is the very bottom line outcome that people want?
Often people just want to be heard. That is one of the bottom line outcomes. And that's why it's so important to include marginalized people. If you want to have a healthy society, if you want to have a healthy community, we need to be inclusive of people's positions and find out what their interests are. And as Frank said, tomorrow we'll talk about the values, how those all interrelate and why those are all important when we have conversations is what is going to help you build a healthy community. And in the instance that he set up the example, a healthy voting public. And so we're going to show you a little bit here what happens for those positions and interests to come to your mind.
So why does a person think the way they think? This is really important for you to understand. This is how a person comes to what they believe and how their values are formed. Because once you understand this, one, you understand how you came to be and what you believe.
This is really valuable.
And also then it will help you to step back and think about and maybe talk through to the other person why they think the way they think. So every person was born, right? Every person was born. Everybody that you see, every human being was born. Everything was born. And they were born into an environment. They were born into their family's inputs, their beliefs, their income, their health, their relationships, their thought process, everything in that environment you were born into. And so was everybody else. So think about the environment people were born into. And then they learned, and they learn through their 5 senses. They learned by what they feel. They learned by what they see. They learned by what they hear. They learned by what they smell, and they learned by what they taste. That was part of their environment. They took it in through their environment, through their conscious thought process. Now, a person's conscious thought process doesn't form until about the age 4 or 5, right? But their neurons in their brain are connecting at a process of between about 700 connections, neuron connections in your brain, in your physical brain. Between the ages of 0 and 6, you are connecting, or your little one is connecting neurons at the rate of about 700 per second. Now, a neuron connection is a thought, a belief, an action, eye blink. Yeah, if you watch babies learn, we've had 2 babies born over this last year. And so this first year, we have watched them grow. And what they have learned is a brain connection, is a neuron connection. It's amazing what they learn in the first year. They go from being completely helpless, they can't move. All they do are cry and poop a lot. All right. And eat. And they can't, but they can't move. Right. To 1 year old, and they're crawling all over the place. They are independent. Well, sort of independent. Okay. They are more independent than they were just 12 months ago. And so if you think about where you were 12 months ago and where you are right now, think about where a little one was 12 months ago and where they are. Right. So you can see how fast those neurons are connecting. And so at the age of ability to reason, and people put into their conscious mind or their judging mind, they can judge what goes into their thought process. They judge what goes into them through their 5 senses. And they can say, yes, I believe it, or no, I don't believe it. Yes, I believe this. No, I don't. And the more things they believe, the more that goes into their subconscious mind, which is kind of like their computer. It just operates. It's your background. It operates without any thought. And so things that you start to believe, things that you know are right, things that you feel and know are right, create your actions. And the actions are thoughts and beliefs. Thoughts, beliefs, actions, that all goes into. If you didn't believe it was true, you wouldn't have the action you take. And then that action gets you the results that you want. So that the results then go into your belief system, and it becomes a cycle. So what goes in through your 5 senses creates your actions, which creates your beliefs, which creates your results, which creates your beliefs, and goes back into your environment. So this is how a culture is created. And this is why what a person says and what a person does, they know is right. Because that is the environment they grew up in. That's what they know. That's what is familiar. And so as you have conversations and you engage in them, they are right and they are formed by their values of what they feel is right. The more you understand this, the more you understand another person. The more you can get to the why of another person. The more that you can understand why a person does, thinks, feels, has a position on an issue. And when you have these conversations, when you have the conversation that you can really get down into a person of why do you think this way, or why do you think Why do you think what you think? And you ask them questions and you talk through the issue, not just about the position that they take. It's not about that. It's all about the interest. It's all about the why. It's getting to the problem behind the problem with what's going on. That takes skill. That takes talent. That takes the ability to formulate the conversation, sit down, have a dialogue deliberatively about the interests, and to ask the conversation and ask the questions that dig down deep into a person's interest. So the more you can do that as a community, the less conflict that you have, and the more you will bring in those marginalized groups. So think about how you want to grow your organization. If you want to grow your organization, you want people to understand and you want people to feel valued and their opinions matter. The worst thing that you can do as an organization or as a community is to make decisions without including other people. In other words, you are making the decisions based upon what you know, not what collectively people find out. Right? And so when you start to create that environment, that's where engagement comes in. That's why we say the pillar of engagement, building the relationship and the pillar of engagement, those two combined in those two activities, you build trust. When you build trust, you build synergy. When you build synergy, you build community. And when you build community, you build a process where everyone feels included. And then everyone feels welcome and everyone feels valued. That's where communities grow. That's where organizations grow. That's where churches grow. Because if you're not interested in somebody else, they're not interested in you. So come back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about how to have those conversations, around wicked issues, how to have those conversations around issues that are so divisive that people take sides. They dig in their heels and they create that conflict that all of a sudden you give up, you sweep it under the rug, and it becomes an issue for a long, long time that you're not handling because it's too difficult for you to handle. So we'll go after that.
Those are important things for communities to tackle. They are important for community health. They are important for community growth. So we're really grateful that you've joined us today to talk about everybody being right. And tomorrow we'll pursue why everybody feels that they're right, what the issues around that could be, what the downsides can be, and we'll actually talk a little bit about a process that we use to help you work through those issues to become a healthier community or a healthier organization.
So if you want to build a community where everybody feels welcome and groups are included in that, then come on back at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday, right here at Rural Community Solutions TV live stream on our YouTube channel, Rural Community Solutions on our Facebook page, or you can catch our podcast at Think Like an Entrepreneur, Become a Spark Plug at anchor.fm/Frank Spillers. So until tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, have a great day, guys.
Take care. Make great choices.
And have a conversation to where you know you are right. Bye-bye.